Language translator. Welcome, learners. Suppose you don't know French and you want to start business with a French person who doesn't know your language. What will you do? You need a translator in this case. In the same way, computers need a translator to understand the languages other than machine language. A language translator is a program that translates a code written in one programming language into a functional equivalent of the code in another language. The types of computer translators are assemblers, preprocessors, compilers, interpreters. Source code refers to source language as used by a programmer to develop a program. Source code is in a format that is readable by programmers. However, for program execution, it should be translated into machine language. A program in machine code is called object code. Types of language translators. We have the assembler, preprocessor, the compiler, and the interpreter. Let's take assembler. It is a program that converts assembly language code or source code into a machine code or object code. Its output is in the form of an object file, which has machine-level instructions and the data used for placing these instructions into the memory. Generally speaking, a program that converts an assembly program into a machine program is an assembler. Types of assemblies. 1. Self or resident assembler. If an assembler runs on a computer and generates machine code for the similar computer, it is called a resident assembler. 2. Cross assembler. If an assembler generates machine code for other computers, it is a cross assembler. Generally, the cross assemblers are written in high-level language to make them portable. They run on a large machine and produce object code for a small machine. 3. One-pass assembler. It assigns the memory addresses to the variables and generates the machine code simultaneously in the first pass. That is, it performs all functions by reading the source file once. 4. Two-pass assembler. Assembler reads the source code in first and second pass. It reads all variables and assigns them memory addresses in first pass and then reads the source code and produces the desired object code in second pass. This type of assembler reads the source file twice. 5. Macro assembler. The program that converts assembly instructions into machine code, which is then used by a programmer to define macro instructions. 6. Meta assembler. One that can handle many different instruction sets. Now, preprocessor converts a high-level language code into simpler HLL code. A preprocessor produces input for the compiler. Its major functions are microprocessing, augmentation, file inclusion, language extension. 3. Compiler. Compiler converts a high-level language code to a low-level language code, which may be an assembly code or machine code. A compiler that takes an input source code of one programming language and converts it into the source code of another programming language is called a source-to-source compiler. A compiler is more intelligent than an assembler as it verifies all kinds of limits, ranges, errors, and many more. But it takes more time for program run and occupies a larger memory area. A compiler goes through the entire program and then translates the entire program into machine codes. A compiler is 5 to 25 times faster than an interpreter. If a compiler runs on a computer and produces the machine codes for the same computer, then it is known as self-compiler or resident compiler. On the other hand, if a compiler runs on a computer and produces the machine codes for other computers, then it is known as a cross-compiler. 4. Interpreter directly converts high-level language code into low-level language code. An interpreter is similar to a compiler because it also translates a high-level language into low-level machine language, but the way it reads input is different from that of a compiler. A compiler takes as input all of the source code once. It creates tokens, it checks semantics, it generates intermediate code. It executes the entire program. Machine codes produced by compiler are saved permanently for future reference. This entire compilation process may involve one or more passes. Whereas an interpreter reads a statement from the input, it converts it into intermediate code. It executes it. It then takes the next statement in sequence. If there is an error, interpreter will stop the execution and repause, but a compiler scans the whole program even when it encounters errors. Machine code produced by interpreter are not saved. An interpreter is a small program as compared to compiler. It occupies less memory space. Linker. In high-level languages, some built-in header files or libraries are stored. These libraries are predefined and contain basic functions for program execution. These functions are linked to the libraries by a linker program. If linker fails to detect a library of a function that it signals to the compiler, and then the compiler issues an error message. Compiler automatically invokes the linker during compiling phase. Usually, a longer program is divided into smaller subprograms or modules, and modules are combined to execute the program. The process of combining the modules is done by the linker. Loader. Loader is a program that loads machine codes of a program into the system memory. In computing, a loader is the part of an operating system responsible for loading programs. Loading the program involves reading the contents of a executable file into memory. Once loading is complete, operating system starts the program by passing control to the loaded program code. All operating systems that support program loading have loaders. In many operating systems, the loader is permanently resident in memory. Thank you and see you in the next section.